Let's eat. Jackson kicked his feet up and laid back in the Adirondack chair he so graciously lugged up the windy skeleton path, finally being able to relax. He'd brought the 2 chairs, which were not light or easily balanced, seating arrangements to drag up the side of the mountain that should not and probably isn't legal to hike up. But he brought them up for his girlfriend, Mary. A night like this, one void of moonlight, makes you grateful for Mary. Her light shined brighter, closer to the sun's glowing radiance than that of the moon's pale imitation. The full moon, in fact, once said to Mary, "How do you do it? Shine so bright. It's mystifying." Mary responded with a giggle. "Shut up, you big cheese ball," with that classic Southern belle tone. Something that Jackson was never quite sure where that came from, given the fact that Mary was from a town that wasn't like most, nor was it in the South. In fact, it probably wasn't even legally classified by the United States government as a town. They'd refer to it as the reservation. That's what most people know it as. Mary's old family did not, though. Jackson never asked about the experiences that she still retains from when she lived in her village, and now as an adult you'd never be able to tell that her parents were full-blown Native Americans. Jackson analyzed her face, high cheekbones that were always flushed with a rosy red glow, not from makeup or even embarrassment, just natural glow. Internally, Jackson replays a memory of his father, who was 67 and a full-blown conspiracy theorist, telling this story not just in front of him, but in front of Mary as well. "I was reading the paper, the Inquirer. They said, Jackson, don't look at me like that. They told me, they said to me, and Mary, you listen up too, because this is your ancestry, your genetics or whatever. They wrote that when the carbon emissions started happening and the fossil fuels, all the evil motherfuckers, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, when that all started happening, these motherfuckers, the Native Americans, the Egyptians, how do you think they built the pyramids, eh? You think they just fucking figured it out? No. They were aliens. They were from another planet, Okinawa, wherever the fuck. And they came here, they had their little thing, Maybe this was their home planet, who knows? I mean, I guess if this was their home planet, then they wouldn't be... My point is, the whole carbon shit, boom, they left. They said, fuck this shit. Fuck these human evil motherfuckers. Carbon, it ruins their fucking lungs. Not like us. It won't kill us right away, but it will kill them right away. So that's why they left. His father said this to him while sitting at the counter of his 2-story home with a finished basement, wearing a ripped at the sleeves and collar t-shirt that read, "Tom Singh is crazy," with a white illustration outline of Tom Singh of Blackstone Kia. His father owned dozens of these shirts, and every single one of them was ripped in an identical fashion. Jackson laughed and looked away from Mary as she started to turn her head, probably to see if she was wrong to feel eyes on her. They shared a quick glance, and she saw through the expression of nonverbal communicative ways that he cared for her immensely. Unfortunately, these things, the love, the beauty, joy, well, they all happen to exist within the same realm that the complete opposite hunts. While sitting in the middle of the trail on a concrete slab clearly laid by man, still not to the top of their destination of scenic serenity, they hear the various noises of the nocturnal creatures coming out to play and eat. Jackson picked up the chairs valiantly and turned to continue their journey, and their journey would be coming to an end soon. They could see the faint glow at the top, maybe 300-400 more steps to climb, and then boom, an amazing view that would turn into woohoo, from The Sims. under the right conditions at least, and accounting for no wrong moves made on Jackson's part. With no more than 150 steps left to go, Jackson focuses in on a shadow of something that looked humanoid, and it darted across the no more than 2 foot in diameter muddy path. Alongside of it was overgrowth that, if you dropped your phone, it probably wouldn't break, but it would disappear under a flowing stream of shrubbery and flora. Vines wrap around the trail's handrails, which looked more like leftover plumber's pipes than anything sticking out of the ground. And as they reach the last step, a clearing is ahead of them, and nothing, not even Mary's glow, could make light of what was seen. No grass, no foliage, just the muddy floor of a field of blackness, absolutely void of light and all other things. The wall of darkness ahead of them was impenetrable, it seemed, and no floodlights or even metaphorical poetry would help illuminate this field. Then, something from within the darkness decides to shed light. 2 eyes, circular and bright red, with pure white pupils that bored holes into the souls of the couple whom it laid eyes upon. Every fiber of their being screamed, "Run!" But they were frozen in fear. Jackson's mind raced as to what would come of this when he heard something. There was a loud creaking noise that sounded internal. It didn't seem to be coming from the woods, rather from his own head. Then suddenly and forcefully, a voice. Again, this voice seemed to be in a corridor of his mind, and the waves of sound were echoing all the way through his limbic system. After the voice came the sound of a door slamming shut, and its resounding echo rang in his head, making him dizzy. Just then, the sound of clacking shoes on linoleum floors bled through the echoing of the door slamming, and it was oddly relaxing, given the predicament that he was falling into. The eyes stayed put, never moving, never wavering, not blinking, and the voice grew louder and echoed less. It was getting closer. It was getting closer and closer. Jackson jumped with fear, the first time his body felt unlocked from the state of terror it was jolted into. A long and thick, bony, almost twig-like hand stretched from the darkness and swiped at them, barely grazing their faces. The sharpness of the fingers displayed in front of them was unnatural. Jagged, asymmetrical, yet equally sharpened protrusions were distinct at the fingertip where a nail would be. But instead, this thing had obsidian claws growing from what seemed to be within its finger, as if the black, bony structure was actually its black, bony structure. The blackness boomed, and with that, the sound of synchronous and just as sharp shrills of screaming hellfire sounded off. Each individual scream was similar to a fox screech mixed with the deer in pain, and this alone was enough to break them both free from their terror and kick into flight mode. Ahead of them was a 75-degree angle muddy hill with absolutely no room for error. This was not on the list of things to seduce a lady, but when in Rome, Jackson thought. It's funny how in situations like this there's still room for humor. Your brain can't help itself but to try and lighten the situation, even though there is nothing that could lighten the situation. Jackson gladly dropped the chairs, free from their burden, and followed Mary, who had gained a hefty head start. She had always been quicker than him. She was actually a D1 track runner in college. The sound of death bleeding from the environment that enclosed him, coupled with the hand staying in view, almost as if it was a bodyguard for whatever lied beyond the darkness, that was enough for Jackson to fucking sprint for dear life. Jackson then noticed something awful. While he was running down the steep decline, trying to catch up to his oh-so-precious girlfriend. He felt like something was following him, and as he turned his head slightly so as not to stray from the path for too long and go flying over the 8,000-foot drop, he noticed that the hand was snaking down the path after him at light speed, gaining on him quickly. Mary at this point had gotten so far ahead of Jackson that when he shouted to her to run like the fucking wind, they sounded like just yells, and it caused her to stop abruptly. She nearly fell over her own feet and flew over the 8,000-foot drop. However, she saved herself and turned to Jackson, waving her hands. Jackson kept sprinting towards her, and after a few more fearful moments, he reached Mary, who was at the concrete slab, waiting for him still. They exchanged a mutual, "what the fuck?" look, and then turned to see if whatever it was would continue pursuing them. But it wasn't. It was gone. It was as if it was never pursuing them, nor was it ever there. The glow from above at the top of the staircase was also gone. But then Jackson noticed something else, down the trail. It looked like the same humanoid shadow that he noticed earlier, only now it was on all fours and slowly crawling towards him. He turned to Mary to see if she had any ideas other than run. She was gone. Jackson's thick black lacrosse hair, similar to a mullet, you just didn't fully buzz the sides, was grabbed from behind. He could feel it, the yanking of his head into a position that is usually the last position your head is in before it's bent over a toilet yakking up Captain Morgan. But this time Jackson's head was forced into this position, and he was not ingesting any delicious whiskey, no. He was unaware of what was going on. He wondered what was going on, where Mary was, and if she was dead or if she had ditched him, and all these things ran through his mind, and then an echoing boom rang from behind him, and a voice whispered in his ear. He wondered if this was a coincidental noise, or if this was the sound of her body smashing the ground 8,000 feet below. The next thing that happened, Jackson had no time to interpret. However, science will agree that he was certainly aware of what was going on. He felt a warm blade of unfamiliar material slide under the head of hair that he grew out for so long, and with that the pulling away of his scalp from his head. The sensation was inexplicable, but to put it into the best words possible, it was like as if your scalp was a piece of tape that was really stuck on there, and they were just wiggling it off. Jackson stayed surprisingly still, not truly understanding what was happening, but being fully aware. This was likely just his parietal lobe being overwhelmed with sensory information and shutting off. Jackson did not then feel the next slice of a heated blade across his throat, which splurted blood out of his severed jugular vein over the railing of the concrete path. As Jackson bled out, his brain shut down slowly with it, but he could still see and think with some clarity. He noticed he finally got to the lookout at his scenic serenity. He hadn't realized this view of the little town, down at the bottom of the mountain, glowing in the distance, or the shadow of the neighboring mountain across the valley dominating the landscape. It was peaceful. And the last thing he noticed was the view of the town getting closer and closer, and then disappearing for a second, and then reappearing upside down, and then disappearing, and then getting closer. Jackson's head flipped wildly down the chasm, spreading blood into the air, and the crawling figure retracted into the darkness, dragging the body up the path. The screeches quieted down to silence, and the darkness misted away. Mary walked up the path, which was now lit with torches, and she felt for the first time that night something real on her. At At the top of the mountain, in the clearing, was her father and the rest of the tribesmen who had descended from the trees with their death whistles and drums. They were painted in a bright red and white pattern that shined in the dull moonlight, glow-in-the-dark paint material of some sort. Her father looked down at her with blood-soaked hair and still-bleeding scalp of Jackson dangling freely in his hand. He gives his daughter a look of pride. Mary raises the blade to the sky and chants in a foreign, unknown language. The tribe responds in unison. She brings the bony blade to her face and slurps the chunks of Jackson's skin and blood from the blade. She sheathes the blade, smiles, wipes the rest of the blood from her face, and says to the tribe in the same foreign language, "Let's eat."